Hello everyone, Byron here. In this video we're going to be painting this Old Guard 12-pounder set by the Perrys, so let's get cracking. Right, so the starting point of this mini is first it was spray painted with Mechanica Standard Grey, and then we do the first base coat colors. In this regards I've used black from Vallejo Model Color mixed with Citadel Cantal Blue in a 50-50 mix, and this has been painted all over the blue areas of the fabric. So this would be the trousers and the jacket, and this is what it looks like after 2 coats have been applied. For the next stage we continue painting the blue fabric, and with this we take a mix of 2 parts Cantal Blue to 1 part black. So this starts to make the blue a little bit brighter and a little bit richer, and this is painted over all the fabric again and just leaving that dark initial base coat in the recesses. And this is what this stage looks like when it's completed. For the next stage we continue adding more Cantal Blue to the previous mix. So here we're looking at 1 part black to 3 parts Cantal Blue. This is really kind of giving you that nice transition and slowly building up the color as we go along. The reason why I'm doing this is so that the fabric and the colors are smooth as possible, and here I'm starting to focus on where the light will be catching the creases, leaving the previous 2 colors in the recesses, and this is what it looks like after this step. For the final highlight I use pure Cantal Blue. It's quite watered down so that it's not too strong, and this I'm really just picking out where the sun or the light will catch the uniform at its kind of zenith, so at the tops of pieces and on where the folds and the tops of folds, just to give that final definition. And this is what it will look like when that's completed. So that's really how I approach the blue fabric. It's super quick and enjoyable. So now with the blue completed, we're going to move on to painting the flesh. So this entails painting the hands as well as the face area. For this I start off with a mahogany brown. It's a bit of a translucent paint, so I did 2 thin coats, but this makes it a lot easier to apply the scale 75 triad that I use for the figure. And this is what this stage looks like once it's completed. So following on from the mahogany base coat, I start with adding a 50-50 mix of mahogany and basic flesh from scale 75, and this is painted over all the flesh areas, just leaving the original mahogany base coat in the recesses. So this is between the fingers, in the eyes, around the mouth, and just a kind of a little bit of the shadow areas, but mainly we're trying to just get a nice smooth coat over all the flesh areas to start building up from. And this is what this stage looks like once it's completed. So for this stage I'm using the pure basic flesh tones, and this has been painted once again over most of the flesh, but I'm starting to leave a little bit of gaps in the original colors as we move along. So when painting the face, what I do is a little dot on the nose, a little dot on the chin, and then I'm doing 2 triangles, 1 for each cheek size. And as we continue, this will get smaller and smaller as we blend up with the colors. And this is what this stage looks like after it's completed. So for the next stage I use a 50-50 mix of the basic flesh and golden skin from scale 75, and I basically repeat the process but leaving a little bit of the previous mix behind and just slowly building up that gradient to give you that really nice kind of deep flesh color that you're looking for. Now when I use scale 75, it took me a while to get used to it because it's a gel medium, so that it starts off quite bright but it really settles down nicely as you proceed. So for the next step I'm now using the golden skin tone, and what I'm doing here is once again is just painting incrementally smaller areas with each color to build up that gradient and the lightness, because when you're looking at a face, basically the lightest part is at the tip of the chin, the tip of the nose and the tip of the cheeks, and this is really what you're building up. I'm also starting to pick out each finger individually, so you're starting to give definition in the knuckles, and this is what this looks like at the end of this stage. For this stage I'm doing a 50-50 mix of the golden skin and pale skin, and this is a very light color, so it's only kind of dabbing really at the top points where I really want to kind of bring the viewer's eye to and bring that final definition of intention. So here I'm working on each knuckle, and earlier I was just kind of pulling out the cheekbones. And this is what this stage looks like and the face looks like after it's complete. Now that the face is completed, we're now moving on to the black areas. So this entails painting the Bearskin as well as the ammo pouch on his back. Also going to be painting the scabbard for the short sword and his shoes. And this is what this step looks like after it's completed. So once the black base coat is finished, then I start focusing on the Bearskin, and what I've done is just add a little bit of brown sand to give a nice rich grey. Unfortunately, this part of the video is a bit blurred, but as you see, I'm picking out each individual strand, leaving the black in the recesses. So we continue this process by just adding more brown to the previous mix, and we're just kind of focusing where the light would catch the bearskin. You're just trying to give that nice furry, rich color to the mini as you work. And this is what it will look like after the first two stages have been completed. For the next step, all I'm doing is adding more brown sand to give a bit of a lighter gray, and as you can see, I'm just working at random, just picking out little pieces of the fur all over the hat, but mainly focusing on the top where the light would be catching the fur. And this gives it a really nice rich feeling, and it gives it that feeling of almost that they're wearing a furry hat, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And this is what it will look like after the stage is completed. The other leather pieces on the mini, what I do is use German grey from Vallejo Model Color, and this is just kind of painted on where the light will catch. So like on the top of the cartridge box here, on the boots, as well as the edge of the bayonet scabbard. And this is what this stage will look like once it's completed. For the final highlight of the leather, I add a little bit of neutral grey to the German mix, and this is kind of just painted on the edges. So you can see here working on the cartridge boxes, just where the light will catch it the most. And this is really how this will look. So moving on from the leather, we're now going to paint the white areas. So this includes this rosette on the left side of their bearskin, as well as the straps that go across their body. For this, I start with a base coat of deck tan, and I just work kind of carefully because you don't want to get this on the blue work that you've done. And this is what this stage looks like once it's completed. For the next stage of the white, I do a 50-50 mix of the deck tan and the silver grey, and this is basically painted over all the white areas, just leaving the original deck tan in the recesses. A couple of coats is needed to just get that smooth effect that you're going for, and just take your time so it's nice and neat. That really makes a big difference, and this is what this stage looks like once it's completed. For the last step of the white, I use a pure silver grey, and this is basically painted where the light will catch the strapping. Something to note that when you're painting the white, don't forget to paint the sword knot as well as the bayonet strapping that's also white on these minis. And this is what the white will look like after you've completed it. For the next stage, we're painting the red. For this, I'm starting off with black red from Vallejo Model Color, and this I'm painting the epaulets, the tassel at the front of the bearskin, the red turnbacks, as well as the red cuffs. And this is what this stage will look like once it's completed. So for the next stage, I'm just using pure Vallejo Model Color red, and basically what I'm trying to do is paint the previous areas, but just to leave a little bit of the original color to kind of give that shadow, as you can see me working on the epaulets. What also, if you can, try and do is paint each epaulet individually. This is not exactly easy, but the more kind of time you take on it, the more depth you'll get. Also, when you're painting the red, what you're trying to also do is leave a bit of shadows in the recesses to give you that definition, say on the cuffs or on the turnbacks. And this is what the mini will look like after the stage is completed. For the next stage, I do a 50-50 mix of vermilion and red from Vallejo Model Color. The reason why I do 50-50 mix is that this red is really strong, and if you just go straight from red to vermilion, it's going to be quite a large jump. So what I'm doing is just kind of doing an intermediate step just to get a better blend. But where I'm focusing on here is where the light catches, and this is what this step will look like. And for the final stage of painting the red, I use pure vermilion, and this is kind of just like a dot highlight, just to kind of really bring out the red and give it a nice rich feeling. And where I'm focusing on is where the light will catch the different items and give that final definition. And this is what this step will look like when it's completed, and that's the red done, and we can move on to the next step. Moving on from the red, we're now going to paint the water bottle strap. This basically, I start off with a chocolate brown undercoat, and we just work along just gently, trying not to get any of this on the underlying white leather straps. So just take your time and just make it nice and neat and tidy. From there, I use a highlight of Gobi Brown from scale 75, and I just run this along, leaving the original chocolate brown in the recesses. And this is what this stage will look like once it's completed. Following on from the strapping, I now do the hair. When painting your mini's hair, you can really use any colors that you want because there's so many different hair colors, obviously. But I start off with a Citadel Rhinox hide, which is a nice dark brown color, and then I use brown gray from S75 just to make it look more like a mousy, darker hair for an older gentleman. And this is what this stage looks like once it's completed. So for the next stage, we proceed to work on the water canteen. For this, we basically trying to achieve a wicker basket kind of feel. So for this, we start off with German camo beige, and basically we paint the whole basket with just leaving little areas in between. For the second step, then I use deck tan, and basically I go over and highlight each little individual place, as well as anywhere where the light will catch. And this is what it will look like when it's completed. So for the next step, we're moving on to doing the non-metallic metal on the chevrons of the arms, as well as the little grenadier sign on the top of their bearskin. So for this, I start off with using flat brown, and I just take my time and block everything in. Following on from the base coat, I then do a mix of flat brown to gold brown in a 2-to-1 ratio of flat to gold. And this is really, we're just starting to build up the light sources when it comes to non-metallic. So what we're trying to do is leave a little bit of the previous colors in the recesses and kind of focus on where the light would be catching the bullion basically, and this gives a definition, and this is where we are at this point. So for the next stage here, we do 2-to-1 gold brown to flat brown, and once again we're just kind of working on the previous areas, just making it a little bit lighter each time. Now the trick with non-metallic is to try and get the smoothest transition possible in the shortest period of time, and that's why we're kind of just blocking in the areas and going from there, and this is what this stage looks like once it's completed. So for the next stage, I'm using just pure gold brown, and I'm just trying to catch where the light will hit. And as you can see already, when we get to this stage, we're starting to get that feeling of gold where you're having the dark areas and we're getting a little bit of light. And this is what this stage looks like once it's completed. For the next step, I add a little bit of ivory to the golden brown, and I start picking out the areas where I feel like the chevron will be reflecting in the light the most, and start working on the depth there. So because this is kind of a speed non-metallic, all you're doing is painting smaller little areas. There's no real blending in between the stages. You're just kind of working step by step. And this is what this stage will look like when it's done. For the next step, I add even more ivory to the gold brown. So we're almost at a pure ivory color. And now I'm kind of going around doing little dots where I feel like the light will be catching it. And this is what this stage will look like when it's done. For the last stage, I just use pure ivory, and I just do these final little dots, and this is really done to give you that shiny effect, and this is what this stage will look like when it's finished and the non-metallic metal is all complete. For the final stage of the mini, we're going to paint the gold trim. For this, I start off with undercoating the areas that will be gold with Citadel Rhinox hide. This gives you a good base layer in which you can then paint your gold on top. And then for the gold, I'm using Pro Acryl's Rich Gold. This is for the buttons, the little edge part on the short sword, as well as in this case of this mini, his earrings. And this is what it will look like when it's completed. Now if the figure is completed, we move on to painting the gun and the gun carriage. The French had like an olive green color gun carriage, so this is what we're going to do with this mini. So we start off by painting all the wood areas with a 50-50 mix of olive grey and black. The first highlight is then just the pure olive grey, and what we're trying to do here is pick out all the wood grains that the Perrys have sculpted onto the mini, and you just go slowly around picking it out. And this is what this stage will look like once. For the second highlight, I just use medium olive, and once again I go around trying to pick out the wood grain, but leaving the previous grey olive in certain parts of it, and so you're just trying to build up that wood effect, but still at the same time that it's been painted. And this is what this step will look like once it's completed and the wood of the carriage is done. The next step is to work on all the metal pieces of the gun carriage. For this, I start off by painting the mini with Vallejo black and just go around slowly kind of picking all of these different parts out. Once the black is finished, then we move on to the highlight, which is petroleum grey by scale 75. And this is what this stage will look like when it's completed. For the final stage of the gun, we're just going to do the barrel, and for this I use a base coat of Pro Acryl bronze, and we just paint it all over. And once this is complete, then I do a 50-50 mix of Pro Acryl bronze as well as rich gold from Pro Acryl, and this is kind of painted on the top 50%. So if you see it as a cylinder, you're just going to paint from the 50% up, and then this is what it will look like when it's complete. So there we have it, the completed Old Guard 12 pounder. Now obviously this can be used to paint any Old Guard minis, and the blue can also be used to paint any of the French jackets. I hope you really enjoyed the video. If you have any further questions, please leave a comment in the description, and if you want to see more, don't forget to follow the channel, and hope to see you soon. All the best and have a great rest of your day. Cheers. Bye.